Hello, everybody. Welcome to our webinar on sustainability in transport logistics, fleets and alternative drives. My name is Martin Schwemmer. I'm Managing Director at BWL, Bundesvereinigung Logistics. We are a network of experts and we are here to exchange on topics that are relevant to the logistics and supply chain management community. Today I have two co-hosts or speakers at my side. They are both named Christoph, which is easy for me because later when we have questions, I can just direct those questions to Christoph and hopefully they get answered. But of course, you can also ask questions to me because I also have a role as a speaker in the introduction. And please, most important, feel free to ask questions. At this GoToWebinar interface, you have a question dashboard. There's a chat dashboard and a question dashboard. Please use the question or Fragen dashboard to give questions to us, and then we can address those in the later parts. Okay, but then let's just shortly introduce my two colleagues. Christoph Herzig from HGVs Technologies, please say some words about you. You're mute.
Thanks, Martin, for this hint, and thanks for having me on the webinar. Quick introduction, Christoph Herzig from HGVs Technologies. If you're not so familiar with our company, we are, in the simplest term, the Google Maps for business, and we are doing digital maps and map making for the last 35 years. And I'm actually responsible for industry solutions for the supply chain and logistics industry, and bring innovative solutions to the market with our partners and customers. Looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Christoph Herzig. Then also Dr. Christoph Schönwand from DHL Freight. Please introduce yourself.
Thanks a lot. Also very pleased to be here. My name is Christoph Schönwand. I'm head of Go Green at DHL Freight, so leading the environmental pillar of the sustainability at DHL Freight. That is a forwarding company based on rail and mainly road freight, with a footprint mainly in Europe and a bit around 40 million shipments every year. And of course, going green is of very high importance for us. So looking forward to the discussion.
Okay, so maybe you all already recognized the roles that we have here. We have Christoph Herzig from here, who knows tools and the mathematics and analytics parts, and we have Christoph Schönwand from DHL, and I'll introduce later why he is so important in our round here. I will start now with just a few slides on project overview, and also we did a survey on this questions that we had about sustainability and in fleet utilization in the logistics sector. And let's just go step by step. So what did we do? I got to know Christoph Herzig in the beginning of last year, and then we said, so let's start to do a project on to find out how to become more sustainable in the logistics sector, in the transport logistics sector. Because you all know sustainability is a huge economic trend, and we have to aim for reducing carbon emissions. So our research goal was to discover sustainability efforts in the road freight transport sector, and with a focus on alternative drives, and also to develop or find out, to learn about measures and how to get there. And at this first slide, you see the most important milestones of the project. A kickoff in May of last year. Then we had an online survey with roughly 100 participants. We had an expert workshop in Berlin. We did some stuff in data analytics, and we presented the results the first time at the German Logistics Conference, the Deutsche Logistikkongress, in October last year. And we have a podcast, and now we have this webinar to talk and discuss our learnings with you. So let's just get into the survey at the next slide, you see as a kind of introduction, a word cloud with some challenges that people or participants stated when asked for what are problems when you think about becoming climate neutral or becoming more sustainable in your fleet operations. And hopefully you see terms there that are familiar to you. I think most of the terms you maybe have heard of them, maybe some other words or terms come to your mind when you think about it. But as an introduction, it's very clear that there are some challenges when we want to get there. The largest word is costs. That is not an incident, but because this is really a huge topic. And we have some statements from experts with which we talked in an expert workshop, and maybe Professor Hanno Friedrich from the KLU stated on the topic of challenges that the current measures do not seem sufficient at the moment to become climate neutral. And they will cost an extreme amount of money. And another interesting statement here is from Dennis Caldwell, who says, companies are trying to make the current situation climate neutral on a one-to-one basis, but this is not possible. And from the word cloud, you also see that we have there insufficient data exchange mentioned or silo thinking. And the huge question there also is, do we really work together, or do we only try to make better our systems that we have at hand? Okay, let's go to the next slide. There you have an overview. We also asked the questions, if participants, we had roughly 100 participants, if they have a specific year in mind in their company when thinking about becoming climate neutral. And the first learning from this slide is that only 1/3 of participants stated something there. The second learning then is we can differentiate it in logistics and transport, manufacturing, wholesale and retail companies. That logistics and transport seems to be somewhat more ambitious, but we need to have in mind that only 1/3 of participants really stated something. But the people that did state something seem quite ambitious. So ambitious that experts really doubted those information, and because they are really ambitious. Let's have a look at the next slide, where we had a look at this is a hypothetical question. There, when you see here hydrogen with the highest amount of people that agreed, we asked here which traction would you prefer to use in the future. So the scale went from 1 to 7, and 7 would represent we will use in the future hydrogen very intensively. So, and now what we see here is that the participants agreed that they want to use hydrogen, of course also electric, and of course each technology was asked individually. And so you see here what would be used if it would be there. This is very important to see, because this is a statement in the subjunctive tense. What would you use if it would be there? Let's go to the next slide, because the next question that we had, or a question that we also asked was, what do you use actually? And this is a slide that is, it seems very complicated, but let's break it down so that we all see that you understand what we meant with this slide. At the left-hand side, you see the two questions. The orange bars indicate what traction is currently used, and also at a scale from 1 to 7. You see hydrogen there was 1.25, and this can be translated to not really used at all at the moment. But compared with the slide before, where we learned that they would use hydrogen if it would be there, we have when we build here we subtract these two figures, then we see that hydrogen is highest in its desired usage in the future. So it seems to be, and this is stated in the headline, kind of beacon of hope, because of course, once again, we do not know if the technology is right there in the future, and I'll come to that in just a minute, but let's not have a look at the other bars. And we see also that electric drive train will be should be used, or are desired to use more in the future. Also the other technology, you have a negative value at diesel, and this shows, this clearly indicates that it's agreeable that diesel will be used less in the future. So now let's have a look at the next slide, where we also asked, is the technology there? Is the infrastructure there? So the charging and filling infrastructure to use these technologies. And here again, the scale went from 1 to 7, meaning that if there would be a 7 in each bar, this would mean that the technology is available everywhere, and the filling infrastructure is available everywhere. Just how it is for diesel. Unfortunately, we did not ask for diesel because it was a no-brainer, but to compare, a diesel truck would have a 7 and a 7 at the left hand and the right hand side, meaning that a 3 or just below 3 is not really good. It does clearly indicate that the technology is not really there yet to be used by everybody who's interested in. So of course we have pilots, and we have some palpable fleet size of different types in Germany or in the world, but the technology is not really ready to just buy it tomorrow for the next truck that you need, and also the filling and charging infrastructure is not really there. So there's potential, huge potential in both of it. Okay, so to summarize here, maybe at the moment, the question really comes up where to start and what can you really do, except of using and buying new technology and other vehicles. So, and on the next slide, we also asked, so what tools do you use? What do you do currently? And there you see around a dozen of items where we ask, is it transport optimization? Is it route optimization, fleet modernization, telematics, and so on? And maybe there are other things that come to your mind when you think about how to become more sustainable. This is the set that we asked for, and we also had the item other measures, which is not really that important in this assessment here. But to put it simply, I just made this circle around the first two items and tools that are used heavily with 6.14 and 5.9, which are really intensively used by the participants. And put simply, I stated here desktop methods because these are things that could be done by anybody which is in charge of his fleet if he has the tools and also if he has the data. Big question mark there, because data is not available everywhere. And luckily, we then were at this point in our survey, and we had the idea, we also do not have the data, but let's just contact somebody who might have some data and also a fleet. And then one of the Christophs came to our mind, and we contacted him. So, and we go on just in a minute, but let's have a look at the next slide. If you are interested in having a look at more details of our project, please scan this barcode or check the link, because there is a lot more that than we could state or discuss today. We have some interviews with experts uploaded on this landing page. We have a link to the podcast. We have 2 presentations which could be downloaded, and some more information on our project. Okay, so far, I hope this slide is there long enough though, so that everybody who's interested could have a glance at it, or has a shot at the barcode. Let's go on to DHL. Christoph Schönwand, please introduce your perspective on this topic and what you and we did in the next steps of the project.
Many thanks, Martin, and happy to broaden the perspective first a little bit. So coming back to the question, why does sustainability matter? Why should you deal with it as a company, as a logistics provider? So you see here a number of figures. It's driven by customers who think sustainability is important and make their decisions accordingly. It's important to investors, which look at companies with that perspective, and they do so for a good reason, because they can generate higher returns on investment when you look into these factors as a company. Also the internal perspective, management boards and CEOs are working towards zero emission and taking the according measures. And on the upper right, one thing that strikes me a lot is the job seekers. So actually the talent that we need in our companies, be it on the shop floor, the warehouse colleagues, the drivers, etc. I think all of us know we are looking desperately for them, but also in the office. So it's simply something that young colleagues, young people today want to have when they select their employers. So let's keep that in mind. Yeah, on the next slide, how do you deal with that as a company? How do you address it? Of course, we as Deutsche Post DHL Group have also set ourselves a zero emission target. We invest a lot in training with dedicated program for colleagues for development that we call certified specialists. We have more than 25,000 vehicles with alternative drive on the road worldwide. And the question is now, how do you operationalize that? How do you set a target accordingly? And here you see first on the left-hand side that we made a clear commitment, as an example, to invest 7 billion euros until 2030 in clean operations. We are also compliant with the Science Based Target Initiative, which validated our target here, so that all that is in line with the Paris process that the world community agreed on in 2017 at the conference. And then we set targets for the different areas we are operating in. Today it's about road freight mainly, so let's look at the box here. First of all, we have the short distance, electrify 60% of last mile deliveries. That one also is not so challenging, let's say, because it's rather clear that in the next years electric trucks will be available that cover for the required range, but also other requirements. So it will also not be too much the focus today. And the other one is grow sustainable fuel share, of course, including electric, but you have seen the other technologies in Martin's survey presentation already. Grow that share to more than 30% by 2030. And the question is how exactly to do that. So what are the technologies? Where are they available? How do they work? And that's what we have been looking at in this study. So on the next slide, you see a number of measures that we have already taken within the DHL Freight division. We are doing rail, we are looking into alternative traction. So you've seen in the survey that there's still some new territory for many companies in the industry. We are doing it. We are pulling big levers and small ones from rail and pilots on heavyweight electric trucks, like the one you see here on the top, the big picture. To optimization with solar roofs on trucks that can help operate the tail lifts, to avoid that the energy has to come via the battery from diesel in the end. Also, the customer perspective is very, very relevant to us, like offering climate neutral services or insetting services. Perhaps on the next slide with a little deep dive on this what we call Go Green Plus or in-setting. So what's new to that? It's a bit like doing what we know from green electricity already. So clients decide to book that service, and you know that probably from doing a contract with your electricity provider. You can say, I want green electricity, you pay a little bit more. The electrons that get into your household will still be the ones, the same ones as before, and the ones from the nearest probably coal plant. But you know that overall, let's call it electricity lake, will be with a bit less coal and a bit more water or solar power, because your electricity provider guarantees you to procure this energy and basically to replace the gray energy by that. And that's exactly what we have introduced for road freight as well. So customers deliberately choose this service. How does it work? We guarantee that the investment is then made into clean technologies within our network, and they focus obviously on areas where it makes most sense, or where it's possible, feasible operationally, but also at a reasonable cost. The vehicle that does the pickup at the back door of the customer will probably still be a fossil diesel truck, but the overall amount of gray production is reduced accordingly, so that as you can see on the graph on the right hand side, that the emissions are neutralized to zero for those shipments where the service is booked. And again, if you want to offer this service, I mean, we are in a price competitive market, and green technologies are still quite expensive and they need to work. So you need to know what can you apply, how can you do it. Yeah, so before coming later to the study and the analytics that are possible to help with that, we already looked a bit on different criteria, and that one's visible on the next slide, on how we can somehow structure all these technologies floating around. I mean, you've seen it, the compressed gas, the liquefied gas, HVO, rail, hydrogen, battery electric, and we analyzed it a bit and developed the DHL Freight technology roadmap in order to have our perspective on how we are going to address this. And there are basically three horizons that you can see here, starting from the left, with things that are already there and that we call optimize, so really things you can do, we have started doing. So there are minimum standards like whatever I cut off, for example, or top speed limiters, so things that are pretty common, at least in the German and European market already, but still not available everywhere. We certify our carriers, so our service partners that do transportation, also according to green criteria. Digital tools, of course, what we all do as forwarders is optimize load and route. Rail and intermodal, I mentioned we are already doing this, and then the small add-ons that you can do, like boat tails or other measures to improve aerodynamics, but also use solar roof systems. We also have a commitment here in that area. We want to improve the share of trains, and we are already operating quite a while, but quite a few. But on the other hand, this area will not bring us to zero emissions. And if you look at the carbon budgets that the world still has in order to make this 1.5-degree global warming target, then we need to start now. And that's where the bridge technologies, as we identified them, come into play. So here we mainly see the bio-compressed natural gas and the bio-liquefied natural gas as options, as well as the HVO renewable diesel, not available in all markets, but still on an international scale, there are good options. And battery electric is right about to start now, especially in the pickup and delivery area. So you can do that already. And also there we have a commitment by 2025 to have 1,000 vehicles in that area in DHL Freight alone with these green technologies. And then the long-term solutions, you've seen it also in the survey that many say that hydrogen will be the future. We cannot say exactly. Also, battery electric might be an option. So currently, it's more on the shorter distances, and that's also our current perspective here. And there it comes to this sustainable fuel share in line haul of more than 30%, as we said, as a target. Yeah, so that's a bit the framework. We put some thought into it, and that's how we approach it now. I'm happy to hand over now to Christoph Herzig to explain a bit how such analysis in detail can be made, where to apply what technology.
Yeah, many thanks, Christoph, and also for the explanations on how DHL is continuously leading these efforts. We at HGV Technologies, as we have been working for more than a decade on route optimization solutions embedded in many transport management systems, understanding the path the trucks are running, as well as the networks behind it, and help to optimize it. We also came across this dilemma that there are technologies available now, they come on the market, but it's extremely hard for fleet managers to decide which technologies to choose. Not everybody has a research department like DHL and experts who are just looking at this topic and building the scenarios for the future. So we were really thinking about how we can support this effort and make it a bit easier to let's say understand all the options and what it actually means for my own operation. Yeah, and in order to do that, we talked to a number of our customers. And if you go to the next slide, then I would like to introduce one of them, which is the Swiss retailer and food manufacturer Migros. You may be familiar with them. They're all over Switzerland with 2,000 supermarkets and around 1,000 daily trucks on the road, of which about half of them are owned by Migros, and the other half is coming from subcontractors and partners. So with 50 million truck kilometers per year, that's a significant amount. They have been for many years already also putting shorter distances on train and rail and combine it in an intermodal way, even for shorter distances. However, they have a very ambitious target of reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 70% until 2030, only from the road transportation part. And they have not actually just looked at route optimization is already pretty advanced, combining transports as well as I mentioned, the intermodality, but they're looking further. And so they have actually used the methodology, which I'm going to introduce in the next slides, already for 1 year. Please go back to the case study. And they have been, they exchanged basically 5% of the fleet with alternative drivetrain, which is more or less a mix of 1/3 battery electric, a bit more than 1/3 in biogas. So basically fueling the gas trucks with own produced biogas, as well as about 11 hydrogen trucks. And they put that into daily operation, and they achieved by selecting the right drivetrain technology with the right capacity on the right transport lanes, they achieved a 10% net savings already in the first year, and are now actually ahead of their schedule to meet the very ambitious targets, because through the methodology, which I'm going to introduce, they're able to continuously check their progress, set ambitious targets, and then also make tactical and operational decisions on the investments that they're going to make in modernizing the fleet. And now please go to the next slide. What has been the problem with many of the CO2 models which predict CO2, so I'm not talking about the actual consumption, if you have access to your fuel consumption per vehicle, if you have telematics for every vehicle in place. Of course, calculating CO2 emissions from the fuel consumed is relatively easy. Every school kid can do that with the right formula. But the point is how to actually predict what the emissions will be on a certain route that you're planning to do with a certain truck, with a certain configuration, with a certain load, and what is really driving the tremendous CO2 emissions because of the energy consumption is actually slope and the topology of the road. So we've done quite some studies to see that even moderate slopes on a long distance with a heavy weight, and it's just physics in the end, right? The energy required to pull that weight up the hill is significant and needs to be going into the calculation. Yeah, and that was actually the principle that has been put in place. If you go to the next slide, we go a bit even more into the physics, because it's not only the incline resistance that you have to take into account, but also air resistance, rolling resistance, so number of axles play a role, as well as the acceleration resistance, which comes mainly from the weight. And if you put it all together in one model and have access to data about the topology of every road that you're taking, and understand that in very, very small increments, which is data that the HERE Technologies has in their database and make available in our routing algorithms, we have the ability to predict very, very accurately on different drivetrain technologies the absolute CO2 emissions in a very, very close assessment to reality. And Migros has been very, very diligent in not only building that model together with the EMPA, the Swiss Institute for Material Science, have it validated by MyClimate, but they have also tested the outcomes over 3 to 4 years of real life testing with the different drivetrain technologies, and adding other logic into it, taking into account battery capacity. And so the right or the real range distances are taken into account to understand if a certain transport can be run by a certain drivetrain technology without disrupting your operations, because if you have to add a charging stop, for example, it will blow up your transport plan, of course, and you need to take other considerations to make these trips happen. If you go to the next slide, we have then worked with Migros to put this all into a tool that is now available. And this was also the basis for the analysis that Martin and Christoph were referring to, that we have been using for this project. So we have, as I mentioned, the location data from HERE Technologies with the truck routing capabilities, understanding slope and incline per road segment of 50 meters. We have the proven and certified algorithm from EMPA and Migros, which is able to predict CO2 emissions in a very accurate way based on the truck and trailer configurations and weight of the load. And then we are able to use a minimal viable data set from your transport management system to actually calculate the CO2 emissions in a very, very accurate way, and do that in a very, let's say, visual way. So the dashboard provides a lot of analysis, but more importantly, the data is available for further analysis. And the most important functionality, I'm going to the next slide, please, that we have been using for this kind of analysis, which Christoph will present real soon, is actually the potential analysis for the transport emissions, and understand if a certain trip can be taken by battery electric without disrupting your operations, so the distance can be fulfilled, as well as understand what is the savings potential if you actually use an alternative drivetrain technology for a certain trip. And now you can actually start modeling your operations and see that you exchange your fleet with a certain type of technology, and understand what is the full potential of CO2 emission savings that you can achieve, and then put that in perspective on total cost of ownership of that fleet and the available charging technology and the infrastructure. And you are able to build actually your business cases around that, similar as Migros has been doing for their own networks, right? And it's very, very important to make sure that the data behind that is accurate, that you're continuously updating according to the evolving norms that are out there, the GLEC framework, the new ISO norms that are coming out. And this is what we are actually working on continuously, and making sure that the tool is a helpful, let's say, in the toolbox of a fleet manager to determine that fleet strategy going forward. So with this, not going further into detail on the tool or the analysis itself, I would like to hand back to Christoph on the results of that study. And then we hope to have a really good discussion with the audience.
Thanks again. Thanks, Christoph. Yeah, so when you think back of our technology roadmap with the 3 horizons, we know that bridge technologies are important. Where can we use biogas? Where can we use already electric trucks? Where can we possibly switch to hydrogen as soon as possible? These are typical questions when it's about implementation, when the question comes up now, how do we get the roadmap really on the road, get it implemented? And when we were contacted by Martin and Christoph, we were curious. We said, yeah, let's see what this can give. So basically what we provided was a sample of real life truck lanes from our Germany network, from our groupage network actually, which consists of more than 500 lanes that we are running daily. It was mainly long distance, so that was the scope we provided. It was done as a snapshot analysis, so summer 2022 with some exemplary data, and yeah, the data behind the analysis was existing truck models from the truck generations 2017 to 2020. So obviously, when you do the analysis based on newer models or the upcoming ones, or the new electric truck generations that are in the pipeline and may come to the market in 2024, 2025, the thing may look different. I mean, that's pretty clear that we need to keep that in mind. On the other hand, the data that were behind here, they are proven from practice. So they are running already for Micro, for example. And in that sense, they are also quite insightful. Yeah, and there were only 3 technologies that we looked at this stage, and that was the bio-CNG, hydrogen, and battery electric. So also to be very clear here, there are other technologies out there, like the bio-LNG, which is quite interesting for very long distance, for example. And also the rail, as I mentioned, they could not be part of the analysis and were not covered. Yeah, so continuing on the right-hand side with a number of assumptions and also restrictions that we need to keep in mind. It's a purely potential-based analysis. So assuming all alternative fuels were widely available already, provided we had hydrogen at all the gas stations where we need it, in a green quality, and the same thing for electric charging and bio-CNG on truck-suited fueling stations. Provided this was there, how would the situation then look like? Also, the real situation regarding infrastructure was not considered. So, I mean, if you look into the gas stations now in Germany, for example, there's very few renewable CNG. There's very few gas stations that are already truck compatible. And the same thing is actually applies, or even worse, it looks for hydrogen. This was, let's say, not taken into account in the analysis. On the other hand, it was assumed when you depart from a terminal from us, then the tank is full and or the battery is charged. While on the way, we did not allow for refueling or recharging additionally, because obviously we assume that we have some schedules. You know, the lead time is very important, and we don't want to have to go on detours in order to be able to operate a certain or to use a certain technology or fuel. So to keep the operational impact limited. Yeah, so that were a bit the boundary conditions. And now the results on one slide in a summary. The first thing is, and then Christoph already highlighted that, due to the energy consumption, there's really a significant impact of load and the elevation profile on the usability of a technology. As such, it's not a super new thing. We all know that from driving a passenger car, an electric one, where we see that the range, it says 400 kilometers, and as soon as we go up the hills or go fast on the motorways, we see how fast it goes down to 300 or 250, while we have just driven 10 kilometers. But the range, the impact of that is so tremendous. So for each of the technologies we looked at, it varies by at least 100%. So for hydrogen, in some lanes it can be 200 kilometers, in others it can be 450. Or taking an electric vehicle, where it says formally it reaches 250, and you know from practice, okay, you will reach 190, 200, that should be fine. But if you use that vehicle fully loaded in the hills, you will find cases in which you can be lucky to achieve 60 kilometers range. So that was a quite interesting finding, at least for me. Then when we look at the technologies in a bit more detail, we have the highest potential with bio-CNG, given that it allows for quite a good range already. So more than 70% of the lanes would be theoretically possible to operate with that fuel. So it confirms that it remains a key bridge technology to decarbonize for us. For hydrogen, the fuel cells are not yet super fully mature, meaning that the range is a bit lower currently, meaning the potential is at 40 to 50% of range, which is still great. I mean, you have a technology here that is zero emission, that can be produced from green electricity. So it's definitely a promising long-term solution towards 2030 when it gets more mature, and also the ranges may further grow. For battery electric, at least with the currently available trucks, etc., only 10% of the lanes can theoretically be used. So it confirms basically on our view that the use cases are mainly within local and regional traffic. And the final finding here was that the potential varies a lot depending on where you are in your network. So perhaps also things you normally don't really have in mind, but you may have differences in the load profile depending on the location, or when you have a smaller terminal, a smaller network hub that has perhaps a lower utilization. This can play a role, as well as the distances driven. So for example, if you have a terminal in the middle of Germany or with lower loads, then this might be, I mean, you need to start somewhere when you want to go green. And such a location might then be, for example, pretty well suited to get started. Right, I have a final slide to sum it up a bit, or to go a bit beyond the analysis. So what we think is that our freight technology roadmap is confirmed by the analysis that we have done last year, with the technologies in scope having different use cases actually. We also see that good analytical tools are available or coming up to help with decisions on how to decarbonize with alternative technologies. On the other hand, it's a potential that we have looked at, and we always need to keep in mind, on the end, it's putting it into practice matters, and it's about getting it on the roads, literally. And there are a few practical challenges, of course, mainly related to the infrastructure, so the availability of renewable fuels, the availability and maturity of the technologies, of course, the costs and their volatility, and also regulatory insecurity that we have been seeing in Germany with the LNG toll exemption, for example, where it's still not clear whether this might continue or how the future will look like. So yeah, to summarize it, infrastructure and implementation remain the biggest hurdles to go green, and they will continue, of course, permanent efforts by all of us. And we are happy to face these challenges. Thank you.
Thank you, Christoph. Thank you, Christoph. I just have one question, and then let's go to the questions we received, because there are quite some of them. But Jonas in the back office, can you go 2 slides before that slide? I have one question just starting here. Christoph Schönmann, you stated that the results are that bio-CNG holds a high potential. In the survey from the participants, we learned that they perceive bio-CNG not to be, it was not so popular in our sample. Is that a new learning, or is that something that is not so transparent, that bio-CNG could be a solution, or is it completely new? What do you say on that?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I mean, obviously gas is not an easy thing, especially since the year 2022. So we all know that from gas crisis, and we know it especially on the LNG side, that some of our partners and some players in the market have heavily invested into an LNG fleet, having to rely obviously on fossil LNG still. And the gas price exploded last year, as we all have seen. I mean, okay, diesel also doubled in price, but gas tripled. So that brought everybody into a very, very difficult situation. That's pretty clear. And that's a bit the challenge about the technology, and why some would say, well, no, I don't believe in that. I don't want to move on for that. On the other hand, we have seen, especially when you go for the biogas, that there are some sources, some, let's say, farmers, little providers who are interested to offer their fuels also on a very long-term basis. Yeah, so they know it will be produced next year, the year after, in 2030, and they are ready to make contracts with you, which do not rely on the world market price of fossil gas or something. And yeah, you need to do it in a smart way. I'm just saying, for me, it's a relevant bridge technology, be it the LNG, be it the CNG. Very important. The decarbonization only happens when it's bio-based or renewable gas. That's pretty clear. So we need to look for that, and the bio-LNG is not yet available in Germany, but more from the Nordics, but it's coming. Yeah, so my message here is, when you look at the operational situation and the availabilities, then this is definitely something that merits its share in the portfolio of technologies and should not be overlooked.
Okay, thank you. And always in logistics, it's a matter of the business case. This must work.
The use case, yeah.
So then let's start with the question. There really we received some of them. So some on organizations. All the slides be provided to the participants. Please check this barcode, this QR code here, because we have slides at this landing page. These are not exactly the same, but the results of our project are downloadable there. Then, are the results of your survey published? Yes, this is at this landing page. What do we have? Does DHL, as market leader in Germany, parcel market, put pressure to the government to build more infrastructure? This is all the question that I had, so it also comes from the audience. Please,
absolutely. I mean, we are in continuous dialogue with policymakers, not just in Germany, but worldwide, or on European level, for example, as well. I mean, putting pressure is perhaps not the right word, but of course we are joining the discussions in different associations, for example, and making clear the position of the industry, what it requires. I mean, we all know that traffic plays a big role in the footprint of the countries, and within traffic, then heavy weights and commercial traffic also plays a major role. And if we want to get trucks really green, we need some prerequisites, and definitely we are making that clear with the politicians as well.
Okay, thank you. Then we have a question or a statement. Transport optimization and route optimization failed in transport sector so far. 22% of truck drive in Western Europe are still empty. Maybe I'll start, and then Christoph Herzig maybe has, or also Christoph Schönmann, if you want to say something, of course. I have a background in science. I was more than 10 years at Fraunhofer and did research on the transport and logistics sector. And there we also, from a look at the statistics, also always learned that there is a huge a huge capacity free. It seems to be free, but also it's not possible to fill every truck completely, because you sometimes you load somewhere where you do not, you pick something up where you do not where nobody takes a load, and this is of course also a problem. But I guess the analytics show that it is optimizable. So Christoph Herzig, do you want to say something?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the science, but also the practice shows that if you're able to combine roads, for example, you have full control over your transport plane for a certain fleet, you know the progress, and you are able to, for example, combine pickups with somebody who is actually already en route to deliver, and you know exactly available capacity. You know, your marginal cost for this additional pickup where you combine loads, you know, are close to zero if you're able to take it along. But it requires not only the algorithms to optimize the tour ahead of the day it actually happens, but you also need that full end-to-end control of the progress of the tours of all vehicles in your fleet with the available capacity, and then be able to make decisions and basically activate that asset. Where there's a driver, there might be a subcontractor or 5 subcontractors in between. How do you reach the person? How do you continuously free flow optimize this capacity that you say science proves is available, but actually make it available for additional consolidation? So I would say it's not about algorithms are wrong or technology is not available. It's a way to actually implement it in an end-to-end manner. And there we see that companies with integrated supply chains, with close ties with their subcontractors and partners, they actually achieve these levels. You know, and I just give the example of Migros again, which has that kind of level of control, including half of the assets which are not owned by them. And so again, the potential is there. It's about taking ownership and using the technology in the most practical way and linking it back to total cost of ownership. But I think Christoph also has a comment here.
I would pass on here for time reasons, so let's move on.
Okay, good, because we have really some other questions here now. So next question. Unfortunately, it is disappointing to see that people still think hydrogen is a good idea for ground transportation. The energy efficiency of hydrogen vehicles is half to a third compared to battery electric trucks, which leads to increased costs, wasted energy, and additional emissions. So where does this hydrogen hype come from, and what can we do to educate logistics professionals?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the question, what will be the right technology in the future, and will it be battery electric, will it be hydrogen or something else, that probably merits an own webinar, I think. Yes, it's right that efficiency is limited of hydrogen. On the other hand, battery electric also has some challenges, like getting the network behind to get all the electricity into trucks. So what I can say is it's not clear yet what will be emerging. Also the point that hydrogen may be needed on other areas for the industry, for processes, as well as for aviation. That's also true. But what we can say now is just, I mean, it's available with first vehicles that are already operated, for example, in Switzerland. It works. It's not super major everywhere yet, and it might play a bigger role in a future technology mix as well.
Mm-hmm. I think so. The statement that hydrogen is somewhat overhyped, I also think that a little bit, and I hope it also came through in the slides that I presented, because I said it's a beacon of hope, and to me it really seems to beacon because we had a statement. I'm reading just along from Dennis Caldwell once again. Companies are trying to make the current situation climate neutral on a one-to-one basis, but this is not possible. And to me, it seems like, okay, hydrogen trucks could be in range and in load capacity the one-to-one fit to what we have now with diesel trucks. And so they are looking and hoping that they just can buy another truck and then do the same thing as before. And this is maybe a shift in the minds that we try to find or make happen. Okay, but let's go on. A German question. I just read along in German. Berücksichtigt hier bei der Kalkulation des CO2-Ausstoßes auch die Topographie der Routen? And I would say you had it on your slides, Christoph, right?
Yes, I think this came just before my slide. Absolutely, that is one of the major advantages of this methodology.
Yeah, okay. And let's just go on. Also about the different types of traction that are, or the technology which would be there in the future. Electric power is not a circular economy. We will need huge amount of raw materials like lithium, cobalt. We will so continue to hurt our planet with, like with oil, gas, coal. And in this question, I see it's also a little bit, it's not only the question of technology, it's also something emotional when we talk about sustainability, of course. Maybe one of you wants to say about something on that?
I think this just shows the dilemma and the that I also was, you know, a bit referring to in the beginning. Decarbonization is one strategy. It comes at a certain trade-off, and there's of course politics that is supporting certain directions. So in the end, I think what is very important, what we're trying to do also with the study, with the tooling, with the discussions we're having here, is to try to really understand where certain things are under looking at it from a certain direction, and then see how to actually get started. And as there's no silver bullet, as this sentence describes it really well, and taking into account all the operational constraints that we have in road transportation, you need to broaden your scope, and everybody who is in this industry needs to, let's say, stay on top of things, educate themselves, and make a decision for their business. And I think that is very, very important that we all take the responsibility and play our role in this transformation.
Mm-hmm. Okay, then we are not able to answer all the questions. I read along a last question more as a statement, and because I have some question by myself that I wanted to address to you. So, but here I read, biofuels are quite controversially discussed when it comes to lifetime emissions, indirect land use change. I understand that it was stated it is a bridging technology, but also the availability, scalability is not given yet. Can biofuels really contribute their part? And I do not want to answer this question, but it goes into the same direction as things that we discussed just here. Then, so I have one comment here. Well done, gentlemen. It states here. So we are not only keen on reading questions. This really feels good. Thank you. Because now I have a last question and then one or two sentences on the webinar. So, gentlemen, Christoph and Christoph, a question that we did not prepare, but that I like to ask. Where do you think we are in 1 year from now in that topic? And I do know that 1 year is not really a long time. So this is not a question, where are we in 10 years? This is a question, where are we in 1 year? Can you make that concrete?
Yeah, I mean, we had it in the discussion here as well. It's still not clear what the future emerging long-term solution will be. And I actually hope to be a bit further there by further understanding the different possibilities and options, and also a bit closer to testing more of them to really see what works and what the practical challenges are. So it's a way of continuously improving, but especially the question on what will be the long-term emerging path, I think that's developing continuously.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yeah, I would like to predict the future from looking a bit back. If I go 1 year back or 2 years back on the level of the discussion we're having about that topic back then, the profoundness, the expertise that has been built over a larger community now with people that have really educated themselves and actually putting things in practice so they can actually speak from the real life in business about this topic. I just see that we're accelerating that path. We will still have discussions in 1 year, but we're sharing more and more real life experiences which actually help others to not go through the same cycle of learning, but they can accelerate their own decision making, their own participation in this journey. And so in that sense, I'm actually quite optimistic about this. Of course, not all problems will be solved in a year, but I see the community and also I think the BVL as an organization, you know, driving this topic forward, and we will have so many more people joining in with an educated, let's say, opinion and real life experiences. That is my wish.
Thank you, Christoph. And it's a good ball that I can take over because yeah, I'm thinking into the same direction that it's not always the technology or facts as facts, is also the, do we know what is there? Do we have transparency on what we could do? Do we know this? And this is a thing that hopefully we, with this project and the making it transparent, that what were our results, learnings and thoughts, and the discussion will help to better the situation and to make first steps. And now, as a wrap up, if you as a viewer like what we are doing here as BVL, please check out also other webinars that we have in the future, or that we have in our Mediathek, that where more than 100 webinars are in, that are on very different topics, making transparent what logistics can offer or what is important and relevant for the supply chain and logistics community. And of course, if you want to be part of it, BVL is an open network. Please join, come in. Thank you, Christoph Schönwand. Thank you, Christoph Herzig, for this webinar. And now let's have a meal. Bye.
It's been a pleasure. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.